Welcome back to Creepy Kitty Creations. It's been so long since I've done a doll video and I'm so excited. This is a very special doll video because it is a repaint of this lovely lady here, Teketeke. So this particular doll was the first doll I ever made and I've been looking forward to remaking her. If you are familiar with the channel, you know that this is my original character from my upcoming novella, Scritch Scratch, The Legend of Teketeke, which is coincidentally now available for pre-order. Everyone who pre-orders will get the first 3 chapters of the book, as well as a PDF of bonus scenes, deleted scenes, and even an alternate ending, all annotated with fun background information about the book. And everyone who pre-orders will also go in the draw to win the doll that we're making today, along with some other goodies. I'm also going to read out the first chapter while we make our doll today. So without any further ado, let's get started. This is the same doll base as our mystery mummy from this video here. So I'm starting with the wig caps since the doll already comes pre-prepped. It's not got any hair, so it's just easiest to start with this. And I do the wig cap in a particular way to get all the glad wrap and fabric down flat around the ears. So I just use the sort of little elastic bands that you use for braces to do that. And then I just use some fabric glue and I do about 5 coats of this, making sure that it dries in between all coats. Great, so once that's nice and dry, we can cut all the fabric off and the elastic bands after drawing on the hairline, so I know where to paint. So she's going to have bangs, so I just want to do a little semicircle where her bangs need to be, just as a guideline. Although actually once I paint it you can't really see any of this, so there probably wasn't much point in that, was there? So for those of you unfamiliar with the Legend of Teketeke in the Japanese urban legend, I've written a little foreword at the beginning of the book, which I'll read for you now. Most people have been afraid of the dark at some time or another. I mean, what's not to be afraid of? Many of us rely on sight for 90% of our data on what's going on around us, but in the dark we lose that. We have to rely on sound, touch and smell to navigate our surroundings, which is mildly terrifying for those of us who are not used to doing so. That is why I think Teketeke is such a scary urban legend. Japan has a wide variety of urban legends, many of which focus on vengeful spirits known as onryo. Teketeke is one such legend. There are a few variations, but the general story goes that Teketeke is the spirit of a girl who fell onto train tracks just as the train was arriving and was cut clean in half. Her spirit tends to haunt urban areas, usually at night. Teketeke in Japanese roughly translates to Scritch Scratch in English, but is literally the onomatopoeia of a body dragging across the ground. Very specific, I know. Because she was cut clean in half, Teketeke must drag herself along the ground using her hands or elbows. The sound she makes is how she came to be known as Teketeke. According to legend, if you were ever to cross her path, she would chase you down at an alarming speed and slice you in half with her scythe. So if you ever hear the scratch scratching of a body dragging across the ground at night in the darkness, run. So I've made her wig cap the same way that I do for all my dolls, although I didn't have black yarn, so I went for this really nice, very dark brown. It is practically black, but it just has a nice variation in the colour, especially in the light. And as you can see when cutting off the fringe, you can make good use of it by just adding some more glue and turning it into a weft, which is great if you are running a little low on them. This part is always so satisfying, just cutting off those wispy ends and getting a nice straight cut. You've probably noticed by now that she's already had body modifications in this scene. Don't worry, we're going to come to that. I didn't really make her in an entirely linear fashion. This is always my least favourite part of making wigs, just flipping the parting weft and putting in that secondary one, because I'm always worried that I'm not going to get them quite flush and there's going to be a little bit of a gap, so I just try and really push that in there, and it worked out really well. I spray her hair with a bit of hairspray and brush that down, and then use some more Glad Wrap. Once I've gotten all of these little flyaways, I use the Glad Wrap again while the hairspray is still wet, so that it gets the hair nice and flat. And this is why I've left the doll with the Glad Wrap on underneath, so that none of that hairspray gets on the doll's face. So I just leave her overnight. So while we do that, on to the body modifications, and as you can see, she's wearing the wig cap without the wig made, so yeah, I really don't do things in order. So first of all, we're gonna cut her in half, because that is what makes her Teketeke. But the original saw that I was using wasn't really working, so now I'm going into the fine-toothed cleaver. This is really fun, actually. It took a bit more oomph than I thought it would, but because I plan on having some magnets in there so that we can have her body together, but then also take it apart and have her go from normal schoolgirl to Teketeke. So I'm just filling it in with some tin foil. And we're going to do the modifications with Milliput, but because the body is pretty hollow, I need to fill that in there with something light so that she doesn't weigh too much. And now to use my arch nemesis, Milliput. I usually go for the blue one because then I can tell if it's mixed, but last time I did that it was a real pain in the butt to colour, so I'm going to go with the fine white this time, which is harder to tell if it's totally mixed, but it's much easier to paint, so I'll just be sure to mix it really well off camera. And I eventually got it. Well, I was nervous while I was sculpting it because I didn't know if it was fully mixed. So I was terrified that it wasn't going to cure properly, but we're all good, it did. So now just going to fill that in there and sculpt away, mainly just to get a base, because I'll be making up the main shape, or rather the main gore, later. So just going to slip that magnet in. I love these magnets because they're really strong, but because they're really strong I need to make sure to have no metal near it while I'm sculpting, because it will just rip it straight out. Publishing my first book, I thought that I did a lot of research, I watched a lot of YouTube videos, so I thought it was going to be quite straightforward, but lots of things did end up going wrong. I ended up needing to reformat the print book about 3 or 4 times because of issues with the fonts and how it was showing up in the PDF, and then yeah, it was all a bit of a nightmare, which is why I've been gone for so long, so sorry about that. I'll try and be a bit more regular with my posting now that the book is available for pre-order. So it might have been a stressful process, and especially getting everything done in time. I've been juggling way too many things, so I'm looking forward to not having to juggle quite so much, but mostly looking forward to being able to share this book with you, and I do hope that you guys like it. It's been in the making for over 4 years, along with its companion pieces that I still need to write, but yeah, when it's a story that's been with you for so long, it's really special to be able to share that. Yep, that did just happen. Ugh! For those of you who missed it, here's the slow motion of my ultimate frustration. So now we'll just have to pop that back in there and go over it again and make sure that it's really secure in there. Like, I usually love working with magnets, but I do freely admit this is the most frustrating part of working with them, is that they will just grab onto anything and everything, especially each other. So I've been trying to test it and make sure that it's going to fit together, but I can't do it too much or it's just going to rip them straight out of both ends. So now we're going to give them a little bit of a sand. Not too much because it doesn't need to be perfect. It's going to be pretty gory, so needless to say, things aren't going to be totally smooth. So we're going to paint them closer to the skin color. It's not an exact match, but that's okay. It's going to be covered with red later. And did the same with the bottom half. Time for some body blushing, just to get the skin the right colour, because this is a very lively blush pink or nude colour, and we want her to look a little bit more creepy and bring out some of those greys and very subtle greens, blues. I love these kinds of horror repaints because even with the blushing, you don't have to be too picky about it. It doesn't need to be perfect. If something smudges there, it's not the end of the world. It'll almost add more to the character because she's supposed to be quite grungy looking compared to other doll repaints where they need to look a bit more tidy, and well, I try and get those ones as perfect as possible, but that's why these ones are so much fun. You don't need to focus on that. You can just let rip and have at it, which is wonderful. Using greys or blacks on dolls for body blushing tends to look a bit too muddy. So now I'm just going in with some deepish browns, which, yeah, they look less dirty and a bit more natural shading skin tones. And while we continue this body blushing, I'll read you out the first chapter of the book. I hope you like it. Chapter 1. Scritch Scratch, Saitama, Japan, 2020. This is such a drag, Officer Kawada groaned, warming his fingers on his hot takeaway cup. You've been complaining for the last hour, Officer Honda clicked his teeth. Orders are orders, now keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. Officer Yuki Honda was your typical yes man and had excelled at the academy. He was gunning for top brass one day, Commissioner General if he had his way. Needs to pull that stick out of his ass, Kawada thought, the fidgety tapping of his standard issue shoes hardly making a ripple in the pool of noise. His gaze wandered lazily over the hordes of people coming in and going through the main entrance of Omiya Station. When he was young, he used to think train stations were like the Anywhere door from Doraemon, a magical portal capable of transporting thousands of people all over Japan. Through his adult eyes, it appeared painfully mundane. Normal people on normal commutes. How can we keep an eye out if we don't even know what we're looking for? Anyone suspicious doesn't really narrow it down. Anyone with unreasonably oversized bags, children travelling alone, lone middle-aged men looking nervous, use your imagination, Officer Honda replied, arms crossed. Kawada sighed as he smoothed his hair back. The summer's humidity was wreaking its usual havoc. Other prefectures don't have extra patrols. What's so special about here? I've heard rumours, but none that hold water. It's what we've been told to do, that's all that matters. You need to know how to follow orders if you want to make a career out of this. Most of their conversations were 10% speaking and 90% awkward silences. A mother with her young daughter stole a glance at them when they walked past. She must think there's some kind of criminal on the loose or something, Kawada thought, knowing their presence was probably scaring more people than it was comforting. especially with Officer Honda looking like a drill sergeant. All he needed was an assault rifle and a SWAT vest and the look would be complete. We can't watch out for trouble if we die of boredom first. You're from Saitama, right? Kawada asked. He was desperate for anything to take his mind off the residual hum of the swarm. It was like being inside a beehive after someone shook it a few times. Yes, why? You must have some stories. What did you do when you were a kid? Anything interesting? Kawada tried to picture Officer Honda as a normal, easygoing kid. Can't be much different from growing up in... Where are you from again? Osaka. Anyway, it's hard to think of something on the spot like that, Officer Honda replied, his eyes darting from person to person as he scanned the masses. Ah, there is one thing. Scared me to death when I was in middle school. This sounds promising. Me and a couple of friends were just leaving school, later than usual because we got caught up playing baseball, when I noticed a window on the 4th floor of the main building was open. It was hard to miss with the curtains being pulled out, waving in the wind. That's when my friend first told me about Teketeke. Never heard of it. Kawada noticed a group of high school kids heading towards the west exit. One of them carried a large sports bag, big enough to fit a small child. The boy wore a cap and baseball gloves, so Kawada didn't bother searching his bag. It's an urban legend, especially around Saitama. A boy leaves school late after dark when he sees a girl through an open window on the 2nd floor, leaning on her elbows on the windowsill. A girl scared you shitless, Kawada said, drinking down the last of his coffee and tossing it into the recycling bin next to them. Not surprised. They're all pretty effing scary. Very funny. The fact that she was inside an all-boys school after the gates had all been locked didn't help, Officer Honda replied, clicking his teeth again. A real beauty too, apparently. But after he called out to her, he found out she was somewhat... lacking. Lacking what? Her lower body. Kawada scrunched up his nose. Sounds like a bad joke. Maybe now that we're adults, but it was a terrifying story as a kid. The sound she made was even scarier. The boy turned to run, but all he could hear behind him was the sound of her dragging herself along the ground. That's why they call her Teketeke. Scritch Scratch. So what happened to the kid? Kawada asked. His eyes trailed after a stunning woman in a long white dress and designer sun hat. Her wavy black hair was slightly frizzy in the humidity, but she was beautiful nonetheless. Maybe I should search her bag. He was found the next morning cut in half, his lower body missing. That's disgusting. You talk about it as if it actually happened. It did, in a way. The story even made papers. The boy did actually go missing, but they didn't find his mutilated corpse. They didn't find him at all. There was a surge of missing children cases back then, but it's just a silly legend. Nothing to lose sleep over. Is that a fact? Sergeant Sasaki's deep baritone voice tore them from their conversation. The veteran police officer had not a hair out of place, although the odd wisp of grey affirmed his advancing age. He stared at them, his eyes critical and accusing. Deep, dark circles under his eyes made him look old and haggard. I wonder how ancient the old goat really is, Kawada thought. Care to tell me why you're standing here talking instead of patrolling the rest of the station? There's more to look at than just this area. The north, south and east exits, for example. Did it even cross your minds to check people going on and off the platforms? Not everyone gets off here. No, sir. I'm sorry, sir. We were just... Officer Honda tried to explain when Sergeant Sasaki cut him off, his voice sharp as a switchblade. Take my advice. Don't talk about that story or those missing children cases again. Not at our station, not at any station in Saitama, or I'll personally oversee your transfers. Understood? Yes, sir. In less than a minute, Officer Honda had lost all colour. His forehead glistened with fresh sweat. Good. Now come with me. If you look up patrol in the dictionary, I think you'll find that it says to watch over an area by walking or travelling around it. Sergeant Sasaki walked on ahead of them, his head turning left and right. Geez, no need to bite our heads off. It's not like anyone died, Kawada thought. His lips pursed as they head towards the entrance to the nearest platform. The stairs were crammed with people. Kawada tried not to accidentally jab anyone with his elbow while he made his way down. A hard jolt to the side made Kawada cry out, "Hey!" A man in a navy blue cap and black t-shirt quickened his pace and passed Kawada, pulling his cap further over his face. Asshole, could have at least apologised, Kawada thought bitterly. Sergeant Sasaki was already ahead of them on the platform, his face strained with concentration as he scanned both sides of the platforms. Kawada followed his lead. Most of the crowd was condensed to the right side of the platform, bound for Higashinomiya. Several women, housewives judging by their clothes, elementary school kids in brightly coloured hats, as well as high schoolers glued to their phones. Nothing odd there, though Kawada wondered how the hell they could navigate the crowded platform without looking up. He spotted the man in the blue cap crossing from the left platform to the right side, no phone in his hand, but also with his head bowed low. He didn't look up even once. Kawada snorted. That explains a lot. No wonder he bumps into people if he doesn't bother looking where he's going. Suddenly, Sergeant Sasaki's head snapped to the right before hurrying to the platform bound for Higashinomiya. Something wrong? Officer Honda whispered to Kawada. Kawada shrugged. Beats me. The familiar sound of an ascending xylophone scale, followed by a pre-recorded female voice announcing the train's arrival, blasted over the intercom.
まもなく1番線に東大宮方面行きが参ります。危ないですから黄色い線までお下がりください。The train bound for Higashi-Omiya will arrive momentarily at platform 1. Please wait behind the yellow line. Kawada's gaze trailed after Sergeant Sasaki, who was making a beeline towards the man in the blue cap. What am I missing? His eyes darted from person to person, his heart beating fast, the longer he took to find that one missing link. He finally fixed on a little girl, only about 6 years old, waiting behind the yellow line for the train. She'd taken off her bright yellow school hat, making her almost invisible. Sergeant Sasaki was already beside her, crouching down as he spoke. The man in the blue cap stopped, turned on his heels, and hurried in the opposite direction. Kawada motioned for Honda to follow the man while he made his way over to Sergeant Sasaki. You two stay here and keep an eye on things while I see this little one home, Sergeant Sasaki said, smiling down at the girl. It was the most human expression Kawada had ever seen him make, almost paternal. Looking back, Officer Honda shook his head. The man was long gone. How did you notice that guy so quickly, sir? I only thought his behaviour was suspicious after following your lead, Kawada whispered so the little girl couldn't overhear. You have to notice these things, Kawada. People's lives depend on it. Sergeant Sasaki took the girl's hand and escorted her onto the train. I'll be back soon. Kawada, you keep watch here. Honda, you patrol the rest of the station. Don't trust anybody. The train doors slid shut and the train sped off. What was that all about? Officer Honda asked, wiping his forehead with his pocket handkerchief. That girl might have been kidnapped if Sergeant Sasaki hadn't been here, Kawada said, staring at the ground, full of self-loathing. He'd thought of this as a shit assignment with no real merit, but Sergeant Sasaki just proved that what they did or did not notice could change someone's life forever. I hope you enjoyed that preview of Chapter 1. As you can probably tell by this part here, I had way too much fun painting. I don't often get to paint realistic gore, which is why I thought to put a warning up. So don't worry, if you don't like blood, I will let you know when you can look again. Because I wasn't quite happy with how it looked just with the Millie part, I actually went in with hot glue like I did for my mystery mummy. Although his was more like burns rather than wounds, but it was just perfect for what I was trying to accomplish, and I probably overdid it on the gore a little bit, but it was just so much fun. And it's going to look awesome when it's glossy. So a bit of context for the book is, you can probably tell from that first chapter, is that the first part of the book and the general undertone is that of a crime thriller, and then as you get more to the end of the book, it just starts getting darker and a bit more into the horror vibe.
It is young adult horror, so it's it's quite an easy read, and it's a novella, so it's on the shorter side at about 170 pages. So just one of those perfect books. Well, maybe not read before bed if you do tend to scare a bit easy, but it's definitely a book that you could get through in one sitting if you wanted to. And if you're wondering how this connects to Teketeke without giving anything away, this and its companion novellas, they are all origin stories for how these legends came to be. So as the story progresses, you will find more connections to Teketeke. Really pleased with how that came out. Now it's time to do the lower half, which I did have to paint a kind of nude colour because I'd already gone in with some red paint before doing the hot glue, which it looked a little bit muddy, but I'm glad that so far the red is covering it up a bit more. Again, I had far too much fun painting this and did probably go a little over the top as far as the gore and how realistic it would be looking like this if you got cut in half by a train, but it was just too much fun to pass up. So rather than going in with just different shades of red, I find that it looks a lot more realistic if you go in with a darker red, a lighter red as a highlight, and then go in with brown and a dark purple for the shading. The dark purple is a lot more realistic than going in with black, and it just adds a little bit of variety to the colour tones and that underlying shading. Looking good. Now, I didn't take into account how much height this was going to add on, so I'm going to add on another magnet to connect her top half to her lower half, so it's a bit more stable. And now that that's done, I'll go in with some wet watercolours. I wanted to wait for this because I needed the layers of Mr. Superclear to help with the painting of her body wound. Now I'm going in with some black acrylic because I don't know, the watercolour just never seems to get quite dark enough for that eyeliner. Sorry, my hand keeps getting in the way. I used the wrong setting on my camera. Going in with some of the lighter, it's sort of a bluish purple for her lips to sort of make them look cold and oxygen deprived. And now with some wet watercolour highlights. And then just again going over with the black acrylic to just really bring that out. Here's a quick before and after of before the wet watercolours and after. And now I'm going to do something I have never done on a doll before and just try and give her like freckles or that realistic skin texture using very wet watercolours and just blotting it out so that it doesn't go too dark. And I'm just using a really cheap paintbrush with more separated bristles, because then I'll get a wider variety of dots, spots and freckling. And this came out so much better than I thought it would. Now I want to do it on all of my dolls. And it made her skin look more realistic, but I did go a little bit darker because I did want her to look like she had fallen, had a little bit of dirt on her. But yeah, mostly just getting that skin-like texture. And she's done. The body goes together really nicely and she's looking really cool. But not quite realistic enough for a fresh wound, so I'm going to go in with, usually I use Liquitex High Gloss, but this time I'm actually using, I think it's Tamiya Clear Enamel Paint Gloss, which I haven't used before, but it worked really well. It's really nice and glossy, and yeah, I think it will hold up really well, and it just gives that level of realism that just... yeah, this brings out my horror happy. Adding some gloss to the top of the body as well. And once that's dry, and a little bit to the lips. And once that's dry, I put in some 3D eyelashes. And these eyeballs that I made off camera just because I needed to make quite a few of them. And they took 2 hours to put in, but seconds with this lovely transition. And they glow in the dark. I used some glow in the dark paint just to really bring out that creepy. Now, I made most of her outfit off camera, I'm sorry, because the video is already getting quite long. Here's how I made her some cute little socks using these socklets, human-sized socklets, and just cutting them down, pinning them to her foot, and just sewing as tight as I can around there, and flipping them inside out, and they just make cute little socks. I painted her shoes brown to make them look a bit more like Japanese schoolgirl loafers, and I'm just doing some shading with a darker brown. This is much easier if you spray it with Mr. Super Clear first, because the shoes are quite shiny and slippery just as they come, so if you spray them with Mr. Super Clear in between coats, the paint will lay down a lot nicer. Then when they're done, I just go over them with some Liquitex matte varnish to keep that paint job looking nice. And this is her all done with her wig and her outfit. I mean, it's the first time I've sewn a doll into the clothes, so her top is sewn on, but the skirt does come off. And here are her glow-in-the-dark eyes. And now for her box display stand. So I wanted to decorate it to match the custom bookmark that's included in the grand prize, which I designed on Procreate. So to get that look, I'm going to use some washi tape to just block off where I want that restricted area tape to be. So when I paint the base layer, that I won't need to worry about going in again and making this lighter, because the base layer is going to be pretty dark. Now I'm just stippling it with this sort of, it's almost like a shiny grey paint, and also putting in some brown paint and some lighter grey just to get it looking a little bit more like concrete, or just that nice mottled look. And now it's coming up to the fun part where we can add the blood, which I'm using quite a coarse brush for to try and get that sort of smudged blood look that I got on the bookmark. But this is definitely the most fun part. It's also pretty nerve-wracking because it's really bright, and once you've made the brush stroke, you can't really take it off. You have to wait for it to dry and then go over it with the black paint again, which would just be a little bit annoying. So yeah, a little bit nerve-wracking, but I really enjoyed this part. So, how to enter the giveaway? Well, once you buy either the ebook or the paperback, if you email your proof of purchase to author@eljulian.com, I will reply with a password for you to get those free gifts of the first 3 chapters and the annotated bonus scenes, deleted scenes, and alternate ending, and then you're already in the draw, and I will email the winner directly on book release day, which will either be the 1st or the 7th of October, to let you know that you've won. Using a coarse paintbrush and watering down the paint a little bit, I'm just doing some wee spatters on it to look like blood spatter. You can also use a toothbrush, but this will get you more spludges rather than the toothbrush will get it more fine little dots, kind of like with stars, which is good too, and I will be doing it a bit later, but this is perfect for just getting those quite thick spludges. Caught red-handed now. I had wanted to do like a really satisfying slow motion ASMR thing with this part here, but that really didn't work out. They didn't want to come off all that cleanly because some are over top of each other and some of them are under, so it actually took quite a bit of maneuvering to take them off. So sorry I couldn't get that really chill, satisfying vibe. But it is still pretty satisfying just to see those nice straight lines all in the light timber. So now we're going to paint those yellow and make them look like the crime tape. And while I wait for those to dry, you can't forget the inside of the box, so I'm giving that the same sort of metallic grey that I used on for the base of the box, and I'm just covering the entire inside with that, and doing the same thing as far as dabbing in some black paint, some brown, some red, and some light greys just to make it match the outside. And of course it also needs a little bit of blood on the inside too. Now, Teketeke has quite long nails, so I really wanted to just go in with an X-Acto blade and make it look like that she's been scratching from the inside of the box with her long, razor-sharp claws. It's a bit hard to see it on the camera, but it's much easier in real life. So to make painting easier, I've just gone over with some pencils so I can see which parts of the tape are over other parts, and adding some highlights and some shading with some wet blending with acrylic paint. And then just writing it in with pencil, the restricted area, so it makes it easier for painting. Does anyone else have perfect spelling when it doesn't matter, and then when they go to do something like this, you suddenly just can't spell and you spell everything wrong? And using that same rough brush to add some dirt and blood onto the police tape. And then just painting in the text using black acrylic, which was really hard. It took forever. And we're done. So this is her, I guess it's kind of like a doll stand because she can stand up inside it. And I'm really happy with how it came out. It's just like a 3D version of my bookmark. So one thing I didn't calculate on is when I made her body modifications, it made her a little bit too tall. So I have to split her in half to put her in the box, but they just magnetize straight on like that. Easy as that. But yeah, see, she's just a little bit too tall. And she's done. So this is how she looks in all her gory gloriness, and with how she came out, she's just like a cute mini version. And the glow in the dark is epic. I'm so happy with it. And whoever wins will also get a UV torch put in the box with it. Speaking of the box, it's time to start decorating it and putting it together. So I couldn't find one that I really liked, so I just grabbed this one and I want to paint it black and decorate it to suit the tone of the book and of the doll. So giving it the exact same treatment as the Teketeke box, but this time I'm using a sponge to dab it on because I didn't have any paintbrushes big enough. And this is how, like, just using this paint as well is really helping to cover up that original box. And it wouldn't be a bona fide creepy kitty creation if it didn't have some blood on it. Now that that's dry, we can add on some of this tape that I managed to find, which was just perfect. So just gonna add that on, and I'm going to use double-sided sticky tape to get it to sort of wrap around, because I want the lid to still be able to come off. So I want that to wrap around the bottom but still look like it's like tied around the box, if that makes sense. So I've cut it where I marked with the lid on, and I'm sticking down that base one, and then we're going to add some sticky tape to the top of the tape going on the lid. And stick it where it's going to match with the bottom half. And there we have it. It really only needed 2 of them since they're quite thick. So now we can start putting together the inside of the box and filling it with all these goodies that I've found. Some black and red filler and some creepy stickers. So we'll want the main stuff to be black. And of course the main thing with this, after taking all the promotional photos, is that it's going to keep everything inside super safe and cushioned. So let's put a little bit of red in there as well. And some of these Halloween confettis, because the release date is going to be in Spooktober, whether it's the 1st or the 7th. So you'll be able to get the book in time for Halloween. So we've got the postcard and the fridge magnet, the signed paperback already in there, custom bookmark, and of course the Teketeke doll and its box. There she is. And that's that. That is our grand prize for the pre-order of the book. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you would like to pick up or pre-order your copy of the book, just scan this QR code here. It's available on all major retailers, including Amazon, Kobo. So I hope you're excited at the idea of being able to win this cute little doll along with those other goodies. Huh? Wait. What? What happened? Where'd the light... Wait. Where'd she go?